My name is Morgan Schmidt. I'm the chair of the NLA, and we're going to run through roll call as I call this meeting to order at 4:02. So Lisa, I think I see you on the screen.
I'm here.
John Bennett.
Here.
Jim, here in person. Good to see you, my friend. Gina. Chris.
Here.
Shannon, is Shannon with us yet?
She's coming in.
Shannon's
person
on
soon.
her way. Okay. That's all right. There you are. Perfect. Chris Pearson. Good to see you. Elizabeth on the screen. Hi, friend. Summer Sears.
Here.
And Ross.
Howdy.
That is everybody. We are missing our friend Cody today. He has had life. He's still with us physically.
That's wrong.
It's
Yes.
important to clarify, but he has had some transitions in life, and so he has had to step down from his role with us. So we will miss him very much. But I know we have Kathy on behalf of the Boyd Acres NA, and we're so glad to have you with us in attendance.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. Cool. And thank you, Mayor Keebler, for coming, holding on the fort down there. All right. Those of you who had a chance to look over the minutes, I'd like to approve the minutes from our last meeting, correct? The February one or the January? January minutes. It is February right now. I know what day it is.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Any comments or changes or issues with the minutes?
My only concern or thing that I thought might have been missing was we went through a period where we sort of refined the goals that we wanted submitted. That summary didn't really make it into the minutes, but as long as it made it into what was presented to the mayor and city council, I think that's fine. It's just something I want to call out.
Thanks, Ross. I believe that it did. It was like properly reflected in our feedback to the council.
Thanks.
Summer, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if we could mention in the minutes, I had to leave the meeting early at about 5 o'clock.
We'll make that adjustment, Summer. Yeah.
I think you had it in.
Thank
there
you so
when I
much.
saw it. Take a look.
All right. And all in favor of approving the minutes with those adjustments?
Aye.
Nobody opposed, so the motion carries and we've approved the minutes from January. We're moving right along. Do we have anybody in for public comment today?
We do not. Look at us. go.
So efficient, so efficient at the
Should
NLA.
always hold meetings on
What controversial conversations can we have?
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll move on. We've moved rep reports up to the beginning of the meeting just so that we don't have to rush through at the end and we make sure that we take the time we need to hear back from each of us and what's going on with your neighborhood association. So I think we're still really good on time. So we'll just kick it off with Lisa. Why don't you go ahead and start us with your rep report?
Hey, thanks. For Century West, we met in person in January, which is the first time we've met in person in a very, very long time. So that was thing one. We excitedly have a couple of new people that are interested in our activities. And so we're hoping that they'll be joining the board and that we'll get that solidified here as early as this week, this Thursday at our next meeting. So again, something positive. We are hard at work planning our annual meeting. We're running into a little bit of a brick wall, however, because we're trying to reach out to Deschutes County and to the people that are running the fire free and FireWise programs, looking for speakers that we've had in the past. We haven't had any issues in the past getting them to call us back. They've been very excited to work with us. And this time around, no callbacks. Can't get anybody to call me back from Deschutes County. So that one is pretty frustrating, and I'll persist and hopefully have a better update next month. And then in terms of just actual neighborhood, we've got kind of a couple of projects that are going through more of the appeals process, like they've been remanded back from LUBA, and we've got some neighbors that are really tearing their hair out and going through a lot of expense to try to protect their properties in terms of protect some potentially taking of property by a developer and by this development. And so we're kind of getting sideways there, but we're working through it. I am very pleased to report that we had a great training session at last week's Land Use Chair Networking Group. Our thanks again to Michaela and to Brenna and Renee. Renee Brooke, I think is her last name. And
We
Frozen.
lost you.
Oh.
I think I may have crashed out there for a moment, but they presented good information on the appeals process. It was very well attended and very well received. We had a lot of great information. That's it.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I know that both the staff and the county forester and the new Firewise coordinator they're both brand new. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but if I can help you make that connection, let me know. I'd be happy to try.
Yeah.
I know it can be hard
And
sometimes.
also, Lisa, the Aubrey Butte HOA has a really crackerjack group of people coming around to houses and
Yeah.
giving advice on what to do to be safe. And they're great presenters. So they may, I don't know if Hans has already spoken to you about them, but they're worth it too if you need somebody.
Yeah, we've successfully had them present 2 years in a row. And unfortunately, we have all of the recordings. So I know they're great presenters. We would just like to revive this in-person event. So we'll persist.
You might have seen my email too about getting the fire or Bend Fire group there. I can have the fire chief come. We have a community engine, so you can set that up and the kids can like
Cool.
stand in it and see, pretend like they're driving to an actual emergency, and lots of fun stuff for them. So I'll be your contact for fire and rescue. Just let me know.
Sounds good. All right, John Bennett, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, hi everybody. Happy Valentine's Day from the Mountain View neighborhood. We had our monthly meeting in January with our full board present. The general concern is the upcoming road work at the intersection of Neff and Purcell near the hospital. So a lot of our residents live in that area of Purcell and near the hospital. So that will disrupt some people's normal traffic routines. And once that project starts, we know it's going to be a few months of people trying to figure out different ways to navigate that area. So we're keeping an eye on that. Another thing that came up at our meeting, one of our board members is a local real estate agent. And I know in NLA, we've talked about the idea of maybe trying to figure out a way to work with realtors to spread the word about neighborhood associations. So she brought up the idea of maybe getting a little packet or at least some information so that when someone buys a home in Bend and they're new to Bend, that it just tells them like what the neighborhood associations are and how to get in contact with them if they're interested. So this board member brought up the Central Oregon Association of Realtors, CORE, I guess is the acronym, and gave me the name of the communications director for CORE. So I don't know if we need to possibly discuss this as the NLA, if that's something that we want to charge forward with, and how could we make that happen, or if Michaela with the city has looked into that at all. I sent Michaela an email about this as well. But it kind of makes sense, I think, that, you know, along with the packet a new homeowner gets, it just lets them know, hey, the neighborhood associations exist. If you want to get involved, it's very easy. This is how you do it, type of thing. Yeah, that's about it from Mountain View for now. Thanks.
Great, thanks, John. All right, Jim, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I got 2 items to raise here, and I'd like to do the first one. The second one is going to be kind of hopefully a topic of discussion for the NLA. So I'll do the first one first. The Southeast Bend Neighborhood Association has been very heavily involved in the gas station appeal. And we went to council a couple of weeks ago and they declined to hear the appeal. But what people don't know is that there are actually a lot of other grounds that we came up with. And these were engineering grounds, like violations of city code by the city staff. And we chose not to basically put that in the appellant's brief for the simple reason of cost. It would have cost several $1,000s more for us to do that. And things as they came to pass wouldn't have made any difference at all because the council did not wish to hear it. Which brings me to my request of other NAs. We would like to do an investigation to find out if the city's violations of their own engineering codes is like a one-time thing or whether there's a real pattern here. So I'm asking all other NAs to let us know from their history files if they've had other instances of either the city, violating a code and say a right-of-way, requirement, or they did something like do a very unusual decision, that's I can't think of the word right now, but it's a discretionary decision that maybe is not supported by evidence. And so we would like to find out if this is a pattern or, like I say, a one-time thing. So I'm hoping that the other NAs will kind of join us and, submit the information so that we can kind of see what it is and take further action. So I hope everybody will do that.
I see Summer's hands raised.
Yeah, just wondering if that might be a topic for a future meeting, if we could have someone from the city just come in so we could ask those questions and maybe understand the process better.
I need to understand more here because it sounds like you are gathering information to accuse the city of wrongdoing. And I just want to understand how that fits with the purpose of NLA. I mean, obviously, if NAs want to organize amongst themselves, I think that's, or citizens and residents want to, take a look at land use process, that's certainly up to you. But I have a question about this group doing that kind of work as the NLA.
I'm just using the meeting just to ask. That's all. I do not expect the NLA to get involved unless they really want to. So, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
Yeah.
Lisa, I see your hand raised.
Thanks. Jim, you might be interested in the recording for the training that we just held for the appeals process. We had some really good answers, but more so you've got a bunch of the NAs talking about some of their own experiences. And I totally respect your question. I think it is something that you'll likely hear from several NAs on because we're all experiencing some issues there. And I think this kind of goes back to why did the land use group feel the need to ask for training on appeals? And it is because we've got so many land use issues that are really questionable right now.
Summer, I see your hand back up.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to chime in with, I think my understanding of the role of the NLA, part of that is to understand concerns and issues within our neighborhoods and to bring that to this group and see if others are also experiencing those issues, because that's something that council would want to address. So it's not necessarily, I would hope the intent would not be to prepare to attack the city, but in order to provide that information that, hey, this is a concern that's out there, and is this something we can address?
Yeah, at this point, I would just say I'm just collecting information, and if whatever we find, then we'd be happy to share in whatever forum, is desired.
Yeah, I don't think that's a project for the NLA, but I know that this is a helpful place for us to ask questions of city teams and staff,
Right.
and better understand the processes that I know they go through that are painstaking to help us all move forward and thrive together. So I hear you. What was your second item, Jim?
Okay, first of all,
I want to continue with updates instead of getting kind of
Yeah.
into a
Okay,
spiral
so
conversation.
the second item is something I actually suggested to Michaela, and that is with the climate-friendly areas.
Mhm.
My board is very concerned that we should become, we, meaning the NAs and possibly the NLA, should become, involved with the process of selecting climate-friendly areas so that we can ensure it's equitable and things like that, and not one area gets them all, that type of thing. So I'm hoping to, if there's support here, to add it to an agenda to, discuss at length and, what the NLA can do to get itself involved in this process here.
I can offer too. I think what we've done in the past when something like this has been brought forward is come up, staff, me, I will go back and talk to those staff that are actually working on the project, gather some information and provide that to the committee within in a memo, essentially. And then if there are questions from that document that I provide, we can talk about getting someone to come and speak to the NLA at a future meeting. So if that works, I'm happy to do that. If there's more interest, so it looks like from a nod of heads that there might be. So
Memo would be super helpful.
Memo would be
Yeah.
great.
And Michaela, maybe you can talk to just Brian Rankin on the timeline, because
Yeah.
we're not really there yet. And part of what the CFAC requires is a robust public engagement process. Just like when we went through the 2016 UGB. So without you asking for it, I imagine NAs, NLA will be involved in how we set up that engagement process. So maybe Michaela can help us figure out the timeline.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I wasn't quite sure of the timeline. but
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
yeah, there are some
information.
things, it's like a bunch of phases of different things that you do. And so getting to the CFAs, I don't remember if that's going to be this year or next year or when it's going to be, but let's find out. So
We're
that
not
we
there
can-
yet.
Yeah.
regardless.
Okay.
Nothing's happening right now, just so you don't worry.
sounds good.
Okay, so the last thing is our land use chair is in the process of kind of withdrawing from the process here. So we were going to probably have to get a new land use chair at some point here.
It's an easy position to fill, right, Jim? Just kidding.
I wish.
It's a joke, Lisa. I know it's really hard.
Mr. Atwell is extraordinarily knowledgeable and has been around a long time, but I think he's just getting burned out in the process. And I think he's going to be moving on to, I think, a different city within a year or so. So anyways, that's basically the latest from Southeast Bend. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the update. Gina.
River West here, not too terribly much to report. We're trying to get our annual meeting scheduled for March or April now. And I think the topic is going to be cycling and Ben Bikes. So I've reached out to Ben Bikes. I know it's just really great. They've got a bunch of board members who actually live in River West, so they've been riding the routes and things like that. Anyway, they've been fun to collaborate with, and we're actually meeting with Ryan Oster, who is, I don't really know his title at this point, but he does. Yeah, do you know his title?
He's the Engineering and Infrastructure Planning Department Director /
A lot of words. That is a lot of words. He's responsible for all the capital improvement projects that the city does. So one of which is Galveston. And so we're going to be talking about Galveston because that's been a project the city has had on the books for a while. And yeah,
Great.
so yeah, that is exciting. That's all.
Thanks, Gina. Chris, we'll go over to you and then
Oh.
wish you a happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Thank you. Things are calm in the old Bend neighborhood. With all the work in Drake Park, we do wish they'd extend south to complete the river trail,
Mhm.
but you hear that from us often. Cut through traffic and a traffic plan is nice. I mean, we're mostly talking about a lot of development along the Colorado, Arizona couplet that we suspect will send more traffic through our neighborhood.
Mhm.
And that still seems most of the issues. In general, we're not full of complaints at this time, and things are good. I would add that we are going to have a neighborhood-wide garage sale some early weekend.
Great idea.
Not so much that we have trash we want to sell or dispose of, but it does get our people out on the street all at the same time. So you can walk around a few blocks and know you have neighbors.
That's a great idea.
That's what's happening.
Cool. Thank you so much, Chris. Shannon, over to you, my dear.
Okay, we are down to 3 members on our board. So we're trying to get a couple more. The annual meeting that is being planned, thank you guys for your help, by the way, Michaela with David, to get that happening in April. And a big topic will be, we can do more. We need some help. Okay. One of the, and the only kind of content piece is that we have a couple of people who are spearheading an effort to get the Forest Service to close the gate at the entrance to Phil's. I don't know if you guys have seen anything floating around about that, but looking for people to sign on to that effort. And supposedly BEA, isn't taking their kids out there biking anymore because of fears of homeless people camping out there. The effort so far has been really verbal against it's all homeless people and Blackwater and blah, 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 and if you go out there a lot, you see a lot more than homeless people out there. You see families camping and, do they have toilets? No. Are there camping spots out there? Yes. Is it a legal use of our forest? Yes. Unless they stay for more than 2 weeks, there's no enforcement out there, blah, blah, blah. And it's Forest Service land. So it's not really a city issue, but to the extent that they're approaching neighborhoods and asking for buy-in, closing that gate there, it becomes a city issue, and because we all recreate there. And the Forest Service has closed the gate opposite Widgie to traffic, and that has cleaned up a huge camping area there. So any neighborhoods who want to back that effort, there's a thing online that I can send you to, and it doesn't mean you're trashing the homeless people. What it does mean, and we had kind of a vigorous argument where I pushed back on until you heard this from me a million times in the next couple of years, until we have a place for homeless people to camp, it will get pushed out into areas where they're not moved every 3 days, 2 weeks or whatever, and some of that is inevitable. But the issue of trash and Blackwater and everything is bigger than the homeless situation. So if you support the closing of that gate, I can help you sign on to that effort.
Thanks, Shannon. Chris Pearson, over to you.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, Aubrey Butte's kind of a ditto on a lot of the other NAs as far as our board members. We're down to 4. We had a meeting on January 25th in person, which is our first as well. And we spent a fair amount of time talking about ideas for getting more. We're having another meeting tomorrow, and we've got I think 6 or 7 folks who are interested in the board. So we'll see who shows up and whether anybody actually steps forward. But that's the first order of business for us. The second thing that we talked about, excuse me, at the January 25th meeting was Lisa's safe public safety and fire safety event that I guess is from end of March, Lisa, or beginning of April. I think we spent a lot of time talking about how much we wanted to be involved in it. And are you able to hear me, Lisa?
She was having a hard time knowing who was speaking, but
Okay.
I think we've got it now.
Are these active?
No, we're looking at April.
April, okay. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
we're on board with it, and I think Hans is probably, and Jeff, our stalwart members are your main contact for that, but I think we're interested as long as we get some sort of influence on how it goes. I guess that's the main thing. And the only other thing that we spend a lot of time on in the last couple of meetings is trying to figure out some way to have a sort of a regular or quarterly social event that where we would also present information on an issue that's important to our NA members. I think we haven't gotten it together as far as advancing that because we don't have enough board members. I think it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. And I think as soon as we get more folks, then we'll pursue that. I think my sense, and I think Hans and Jeff agree with that, and my wife does, who's also on our board, that we need to make our NA more social. The operational and business parts of it are interesting and important, of course, but I think everyone needs to find ways to meet each other, and that's important. So we're looking at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. I think that's something all of us are feeling across the board. It's
Yeah.
just more connection points,
Yeah.
the better, right? Thank you. Elizabeth, we'll go to you.
Thanks. We had our monthly board meeting this morning, and we are also down to 3 board members. And we have decided that we will carry on with our spring meeting. We are looking at the 3rd week of April, and I'm kind of wondering if Michaela, it might not hurt to find out the dates of the different spring meetings, general meetings that different NAs are having in case there's a conflict or any issues that could arise from having a bunch of them overlapping potentially. And one of the big things that came up in our meeting today was also dealt with the appeal process for land use decisions, and realizing that it really, the ability for an NA to appeal a land use decision, from everything that Southwest Bend has learned and researched, is that it's cost prohibitive. And there's a very short window of time, and there's really effectively no opportunity to appeal a decision that is made wherever it's made, if it's made by a hearings officer or somewhere along the line. And I guess I just wanted to try to learn and figure out what the process would be to address this. If NAs have concerns about a decision that has been made and have legitimate reasons for wanting to appeal a decision, is there something that can be done to make that appeal process actually doable? So that was our big conversation in our meeting today, aside from thinking about what we're going to do for our spring meeting. That's all for me.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Summer, we'll go over to you.
Great. For Orchard District, just a couple things for the group. Actually, I brought these up before. I just want to make sure that they're still on the table for a future agenda, because it seemed like others were interested too. One was possibility of a DEI training, potentially that the city could coordinate for multiple NAs if they're interested. That would be really helpful. And kind of similarly with the Good Samaritan program, I know some NAs have been really successful with that, and some others of us would love to get involved with that. So if there's a way the city could help us coordinate, that'd also be really helpful.
What was that?
Yeah, can you
Good
repeat the last one?
Samaritan.
Sorry.
A good Samaritan program, Summer?
Right.
Can you say more?
Oh, say more about that. So for example, it's basically about matching up neighbors that have a need with neighbors who are able to help fulfill that need. So for example, snow shoveling in the winter, right? Some folks need some help and some folks are able to help. So a way to match them up.
That's awesome. Lisa, I see your hand up. Is that in regards to?
Yeah, I feel like we're visiting the past. We've talked about a few of these things, and it's natural that these things come back up. But in terms of the Good Samaritan program, what we arrived at is we had so many neighborhoods that were either doing it or not doing it, and there was no good way to coordinate it. So all of the coordination happens within the neighborhood association. We have done the Good Samaritan program in Century West. We started it up about, I think 4 or 5 years ago, simply promoting it. We typically would promote it right around a big snowstorm, just to remind people to keep an eye out on their neighbors, and in particular their elderly neighbors, and tried to match people up. The good news is we had so many more people that volunteered to help, and we didn't really have any people who said, I need help. So we were a little out of balance. And I'm sure that that's not the case in other places, but I can just speak from experience. It was not an overwhelming task to manage it myself. And it was not an overwhelming task for one person to get that email and match people up.
Fair enough. Thank you. I wanted to thank the city again. I've noticed that I think everyone is noticing that the city's really stepping up as far as helping support the NAs with all sorts of different kinds of resources. And in sharing that with the board, we're all very grateful and excited about that. So thanks again. And also a kudos to the city on coordinating the Purcell Neff closure and the other road closures. I know that's technically Mountain View. A lot of Orchard District folks use that intersection as well for the schools especially. And I've seen a lot of outreach with signage and radio and other media spots trying the best to get the word out. So thank you for that. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Summer. Russ, over to you.
Yeah, I've got a fair amount, but I'll try to get through it quickly. One, we just met yesterday, so that was not quite as recently as Elizabeth met, but pretty darn close. We had Mike Riley join us. He's our city council liaison, new one, so it was nice to meet him. It was also a hybrid meeting. We kind of ran that as a little bit of a dry run for our general meeting, which will be happening next month, March 23rd. Both of those meetings, the one yesterday and the one in March, were held at the Larkspur Community Center. And we went hybrid on that, where we had a little camera set up, and we had 4 or 5 people join us from their general community as well as the board, and it seemed to go fairly well, as long as you take time to set it up. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested in going hybrid. If you want some help on that, just reach out to me offline. At our general meeting on March 23rd, we'll be having a few guest speakers as well, including Deschutes County Solid Waste Director Tim. I forgot Tim's last name, unfortunately, but he's going to be coming and joining us. Old Farm is, of course, very close to the current landfill, and that landfill is going to be moved, whereas the existing one is going to be converted to a transfer station. So we're looking to hear about that. Police liaison Eric Hagan's coming to speak, as well as some people from the Reed South development. That's where Cascade Lakes Brewing is going in. They have a rooftop deck. Everybody's excited about that around here. Maybe a Greek restaurant and maybe a taco shop. So it's one of the first little areas being developed in Old Farm with some commercial stuff that we can go and walk to, grab a beer, that type of thing. That's at the corner of Reed and 27th. So everybody around here is excited about that. Hopefully you are too. Some other stuff that we've noticed is MailChimp costs are suddenly coming on board to $30 a month. That for anybody that has more than 500 people in their mailing list, we've got about 1,000. You're going to be hitting about a $30 a month hit. So we're not too excited about that, but we also don't want to lose the abilities that or capabilities that MailChimp provides us. We think that's a little bit better than what Survey Planet does. But regardless, that's something to keep an eye out for. Right now, we're planning to pay it because we don't have a free alternative, but leading up to now, it has been free. What else? One of the things that's come up within a few HOAs, as well as that's been brought to the neighborhood association, is concert noise, which I find hard to believe because we're pretty far out from the concerts. So those closer to the concerts, I'm sure are noticing some the noise, but there's a few people a little bit closer to town, closer to 3rd anyway, that are complaining that like their windows are shaking, things along those lines. right now, Hayden Homes Amphitheater, or whether you want to call it Les Schwab Amphitheater, has a complete carte blanche and whatever noise levels they want to produce. That's something that probably needs to be looked at, whether it starts to, we look at it, capping it at like 120 decibels, which is what most concert venues are capped at, or whether we want to go all the way down to like 108, 110 decibels, which might be excessive. Depends on where you measure it, but what that level is, how it's measured, and how it's enforced, I think is something that the people are looking for the city to step up and solve, or at least be transparent about what's the plan for this year, and maybe pushing it off to next year, that kind of thing. We've heard that the number of concerts is going to continue to increase, with Live Nation's goal of every night from spring to fall. And that's a lot. All right, so that's concerts. Goal setting seems to be ongoing, so looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. I think that's going to be locked in April, so if somebody could kind of confirm that for me at the end here, that would be great. And then NSSP, so that's the Neighborhood Street Safety Program. I believe they're looking for input on when or where street signs should go from each of the NAs by sometime in April. I want to say mid-April, so that's something to keep in mind. And then, and we're probably going to do a poll once again to grab that. And then, similar to what Elizabeth mentioned, is development. Things continue to get approved in some cases, in some ways that's surprising, as Jim mentioned, with the gas station at Murphy and Brostrauss getting approved. That when it had like 80% or 90% votes against it from Old Farm District, it was more like 98% from Sevna. Residents are just looking for how should they reach out to the city to provide input and try to initiate change or impact things that are being proposed from developers. And if the current way, which is oftentimes direct people to your land use chair for the neighborhood association, if that's the right way to do it, great. I think it's also important to be transparent about what that path is and who the land use chair is contacting to get that input fed into the city, and so that decisions are made taking that input into account. We've got some other stuff that's being proposed around Old Farm. We want to make sure that the infrastructure is being updated at the same time as these construction projects are proposed. For example, the 40 acres that's being built out on Ferguson and 27th is going to add 2,000 trips. The bulk of that will probably be along Ferguson. There is no roundabout at Ferguson and 15th. It already backs up 10, 20 cars deep. To double or triple that traffic, a roundabout's probably needed. And so that needs to get included in that type of development plan. And things along those lines. And now I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Ross. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that there is a cap on the.
Well, it's not carte blanche at the theater. I'll give you guys an update. Obviously, they have restrictions that are not carte blanche, but they do have an exception from the general noise rules because they are an outdoor amphitheater. I actually met with the leadership from the amphitheater back in December after those last couple concerts that were really loud, and they are already working on rules and regulations for this next season. There's particularly one of the electronic acts had lifted the subwoofers like up into the air, and the bass waves are the ones that travel the farthest. And so that's not going to happen anymore. And they're also looking at some ways to actually like cancel out some of the noise waves within the amphitheater with some technology. So they're very aware of it. And I think we let them know we need to see some changes this year because of the community feedback. So
When you say they, it's the Hayden.
Yeah, the
people
old mill amphitheater leadership. So Marty Smith and a couple other folks that met with me and the city manager in December to kind of talk through. And they had already responded.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When they come back and you have a conversation about that, are any of the nearby neighborhood residents or whatever invited to?
Well, so this
that?
was something that I pledged to do. I talked to people that their windows were shaking, right? We got
Sure.
input after those things. And so I went to talk to the leadership of Old Mill. They are happy to talk to anybody about what they're doing and why and how, and continue to take feedback from folks. And I think we'll see how it goes this year. I think also last year, everyone was coming out of COVID and there were a lot of concerts. I don't see how they could ever have a concert every night, Ross. That's insane. But I think they don't expect to have that number this season as well. So I think it's we expect them to make some changes, and if nothing changes, then I think more steps need to be taken. But right now they are committing to make some changes and try to mitigate the issue.
They've been working really closely with Southern Crossing Neighborhood Association. And
Yeah,
so
good.
if you're interested and you want to be involved in those, you can just reach out to them and I'm sure they'd be
No,
more
I'm
than
just
happy.
glad some crossing or people who are
Yes.
immediately affected are
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah, no, and they respond to everyone who gives them a complaint. So they'll stick with it.
Thanks, Mayor Keebler. Real quick on behalf of Larkspur, our beloved Sue Sullivan, who has been our chair and our land use guru for a very long time, stepped down. So the board was able to celebrate and thank her for her service to our community. We have a meeting following this one because everybody wants to meet on Valentine's Day. So I'll be stepping into that at 6 o'clock. And I'll let you know what happens there. But we're talking a lot in Larkspur right now about the wildflower development, a lot of new housing going in to Larkspur. There was a meeting last night, I believe, but I wasn't able to tune into that. So we'll get some updates about that this evening. And then I joined Summer in feedback to the city for just grateful for communication around street adjustments as they're happening. And so the 15th and Wilson closure that's coming up for that roundabout, I think has been really clearly communicated. Nobody's going to like totally enjoy that, but we're really grateful for those improvements happening along that Wilson corridor, and communication has been awesome from the city. So much gratitude for that. And that's about it for Larkspur. So with that, we have wrapped up our rep reports, and I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Keebler for our council goal setting update.
Great. Michaela's going to do the slide.
And Michaela's going to do the slides, maybe on this TV, definitely on this TV.
I'm not even looking at that.
Yeah.
I sent a note. I'm like, can somebody look at this?
Just offered to come in and fix it, and I thought that might be too distracting.
That's
Just
right.
by tomorrow, that'd
Next
be
time.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here just to
Tomorrow.
test it out.
I
for
know,
council.
yeah, thanks. So hi, everybody. Yeah, let's go through what's been going on with council goal setting. I know this is one of the called out functions of the NLA is to help give input on these goals. So we'll start just by talking about where we are in the timeline here. We have been taking inputs to council goals throughout like the end of November after the election through January to the time that we had our retreat at the end of January. So those took all different types of forms, which we'll show you in a minute, but that's when all those inputs came. Thanks to Chris for coming to one of our roundtables. I think maybe some other members came to other roundtables or showed up at our meetings to give input. That's all part of the process. So we are now kind of in this period where we've had our council retreat. We've sketched out the beginning parts of our goals. We've asked staff to go and help refine those and create an actual framework for us. And they are going to come back and bring us a framework in March, with the goal of adopting that framework at the second meeting in March, and then moving into the budgeting, which involves our work plan and exactly how we're going to kind of try to execute on all the different goals and how we're going to pay for that work. So this is kind of where we are now. We're still in the part where we are looking at and finalizing our goals. So it's a great time to give feedback. We do a community survey at the end of the year, which gives us a lot of input. We have the listening sessions and the roundtables. We have comments from our advisory boards and committees, such as you all. There's internal analysis that the staff does and brings to us. And we have that facilitated retreat that council does at the end of January that all go into what we consider for our goals. And a lot of the themes are not going to be surprising to you. I mean, big one is housing, affordability, communication from the city. Obviously, transportation is still something people care about, the environment and water concerns, continuing to want to have, great public safety and access and efficient government. So all those came out of the inputs. So we will have some goals that will come through from our last biennium into this biennium because they're continuing on. For example, continuing to talk about transit funding, continuing to talk about transportation and houselessness response, continuing to work on our community climate action plan, which I think NART wrote to us about. So these are the ones, this is the list of sort of what's coming through and continuing on, most likely into our next biennium. Is there sort of ongoing projects? Like you don't just sort of say, well, in 2 years, we fixed the permitting process, right? Like you keep working on it and keep making it better. One exciting thing I'll say here that has been on our goals and is going to continue to be is the idea of an equity framework. And this is coming out of some work that previous council did, but also from our Human Rights and Equity Commission that highlighted this as a good tool that we need to finalize in the next biennium. So that's on the list. So then next is the draft goal areas that we came up with as far as kind of buckets to put our goals into for the next biennium. And I'm not going to read through all of them. You all had a chance to take a look at this. But you know, some of the focus, especially in accessible and effective government, I feel like that's a good area that's sort of in NLA's wheelhouse because it's talking, we want to talk about and implement new types of engagement tools and new ways to talk to community members. You know, one idea is to actually have our roundtable format with council where we meet with neighborhood folks on a regular basis and give a couple of opportunities for that versus just at your board meetings or just in this format. And also being really clear about what it is we want each of our advisory bodies to do. So what do we want this group to work on and focus on? What do we want, you know, our environment group or our transportation advisory committee, all of those, giving them some clear goals of here's what we'd like you to work on in the next 2 years. And then, you know, just continuing to work on all the other affordable housing and transportation and everything else that are key to the city.
Looks like Ross has his hand raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the top 3 or 4 that we had identified from the NLA for goals was a tree code or tree ordinance update or an update to Bend Development Code, however you want to jot that down. I don't know if that could be included underneath like sustainable development or what, but I noticed it didn't make it in here. Is there a reason that did not make it in the list?
We're going to talk about it this biennium before the biennium's over, right? So
Okay.
it's actually an upcoming meeting. I think it's at the bottom of the agenda, right? Caleb, where you've got the notes. Yeah, that's coming up. So that's why you don't see it on the sort of continuing on because we're going to try to take care of that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so before I move into like the guiding principles, which are a little bit different and more of value statements, does anyone else have any other feedback on the goal areas? You know, the kind of topics called out in general? Yeah, Jim.
Okay, I was wondering, I know several NAs talked about communication with the government. And I know our experience was, you know, some departments do very well, some departments don't do very well at all. And I was kind of wondering if that was included in any one of these areas here. I know these are kind of higher level areas.
When you say communications, do you mean things like talking about projects, holding open houses, or do you mean just simply, I had a question about my utility bill and no one got back to me? What do you mean by that?
In my presentation to council, I gave some very specific examples. And one of the examples that has happened just very recently is we wanted to find out on the Broster House Railroad underpass when last summer the work was being done. And so I requested through Michaela to the, I guess, your transportation folks, it never responded.
Okay.
And so I had to submit a public comment without that information. It's
Okay.
that kind of stuff. I also talked about like the Murphy Road extension project, and we couldn't get any information out of the transportation department at all. That was a couple of years ago, but that kind of process is still continuing. And the transportation folks are very poor at responding to, you know, an NA request for information.
Okay.
So I just mentioned it's that kind of thing, you know.
Well, I mean, that's customer service, not necessarily right, like council goal, but I think that is part of the idea of accessible government. So thanks for
I just want to make sure it was included because I know we've made some ideas about putting maybe a response tracking system so the council could see how the various departments were responding to the people. And so I'd like to put a plug in for that and make sure it was kind of included because I think it's very important. Thank you.
Gotcha. Any other feedback, Shannon? Yeah.
And this is more a question out of not knowing
Sure.
what the heck. So, when I step back and I look at the overall goals and the themes and everything, I get a goal setting process, and this is what we would like to achieve. And then there's the, oh, how will we do that?
Mhm.
And how will we pay for it? And some of these things are going to spill over from the previous biennium.
Mhm.
And at the same time, like, okay, I see in the newspaper, there might be a transportation fee
Mhm.
per household, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, and we want to apply an equity lens to that.
Mhm.
And to me, I go, those it seemed to me like we need a comprehensive look at how we charge for things. And I know there are little areas that are being looked at. I think the SDCs are being looked at, and there's a transportation fee being looked at,
Right.
and those kinds of things. But like that transportation fee is like regressive, not at all within any equity framework. If it's
So are you, so on
But I'm
the goals here, are you saying, because
I'm
that's one
saying-
that was already on our goals that's going to continue forward, because we're still discussing it. We're actually going to start discussing it tomorrow night,
Right.
right?
And so, in all of those goals, as I read through them and I read through all the community input from all the different advisory committees, what I'm not seeing is how will we pay for this
Right, and
project?
that's when we get into the work plan and the budgeting.
And that's
and-
kind of within little areas. And I'm going, okay, big picture, how does Bend charge for things? And where can we create funding by charging for things differently?
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that on a big picture, big project. It's a 2-year thing to change how we do SDCs and transportation fees. And I mean, that's not an
Right.
overnight.
Yeah,
fix
this is
for
all
sure.
on our plate. Mhm.
Okay, and I
So a
would think it
goal-
would be a big city priority to go, shoot, we want to do a lot of things. We expect a lot from our community, right? We want our livability and our homeless situation, and housing affordability and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And to me, that's a big project in itself to identify how we're going to pay for all that.
But I think that the how is what you all are going to get to, right? So we're setting the what, the hopes, the goals. and
Yeah,
then
I
gonna
think
get to the mechanics. of
We're setting
how.
some priority, it's a lot about kind of priority areas, and then the staff can use that to say, here's the work plan, here's how much staff and time and resources you would need for this. And on some of these, we may need to say, okay, that is going to have to wait because we're going to do this. That's the whole part of the budgeting process. And the budget process is the whole city budget, right? So you see it all at once with our budget committee. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, I think the other thing that we do, I mean, yes, every time we should talk about any kind of revenue, we have to think about other things that are going on in the city. I mean, when we talk about transportation fee, we got to talk about our low frozen property tax rate, right? It all goes together. So I think I appreciate what you're saying about don't do things in a vacuum and siloed. And I think that's important to remember as part of what we're doing.
Well, and I think we need like some big new revenue sources. Like, why don't we have a livability fee?
We're going to put Shannon on the budget committee.
I would
If
love
you're gonna
some
buy
tax
a $2 million
support, you know,
home, you could pay 20,000
But
a
I
year
think
as
it's
a livability fee.
terms
And
of
if you're in
scope
an
of the
apartment,
NLA
you
though,
pay
Shannon.
0.
Yeah.
But all of the neighborhoods want housing affordability.
Do.
All of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want transportation and safety and.
Yeah.
da, da, da. I mean,
Well,
those
and
are-
there's other things we can do, like go to Salem and ask for state funding, apply for federal grants, you know, all the other things that we can do to say, because of the situation we're in the city and the places that we can get revenue, we'll do our part. And then we need some help, especially when there's things like state rules that ask us to do things and stuff like that. So,
Right.
but I appreciate the point about fiscal goals for sure.
Summer has her hand. up.
Summer, yeah, go ahead.
She's over there.
Summer.
Look to your right, not your left.
Yeah.
Summer, go ahead.
So I'm having audio issues on my side. Can you hear me okay?
We gotcha.
Okay. Mayor Keebler, I did share the slides with the Orchard District Board, and there was some feedback just to toss out your direction as far as what we've been talking about and what they saw that they liked and just had more questions on. They were interested in the SDCs And we're just interested how that might play out when you guys go into more of the details of developing that program and analyzing the program. We also talked about specifically the water infrastructure and the facilities that we have, and there was definitely interest in the conservation side of that and how that plays into the infrastructure plans. And a lot of interest and excitement about the protected bike and pedestrian pathways. That's probably just us being right in the center of town, right? But very excited about having those options.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's move into kind of some of the guiding principles. You know, this is something that we came to as a group as far as, you know, not necessarily specific goals, but values that sort of infuse all of the goal areas, like, you know, everyone sharing in prosperity, being a welcome and safe community, thinking about livability for future generations and stewarding our land, air, and water. So these things don't necessarily fit as a goal, but we wanted to call them out as some of the values behind our goals and something that we can come back to when we're thinking about priorities or what we should do next or how we should budget. So this is the areas of equity, environment, advocacy, and fiscal stewardship. And then the next one that didn't fit on this slide is about governance and a lot of what I think you guys think about. This is like internally to the city, right? We want the city to be a healthy organization and recognize that we can't do everything and we have capacity limitations, but we still want to make sure that we're communicating with community members and helping people feel heard. So there we go. Next one has some cool pictures of us at our retreat. We did a lot of writing on walls. They made us draw a picture of ourselves, which none of, you know, we threw those away.
They
Well,
made
we saved
us.
them in public record archives. We're not publishing those. They were not, you know, artistic. But
Records requests.
yeah, yeah. No, it was a good exercise. You know, we had a facilitator to help and all of that. So it was really great. Yeah.
Any other discussion or questions for Mayor Keebler while we've
And it's, you know, it's a lot to take in, and there's still time, of course, to send any thoughts you might have as we go through kind of firming these up in the next couple of council meetings in March. You know, feel free to let us know if there's other things you think of. Let's go to the last one, Michaela, because I think, yeah, this has the timeline, right?
Yes. Sorry, I was on a different screen.
No, yeah. So yeah, at our first meeting in March, we're going to get some of that budget update that's going to help us think about, you know, what do we have the resources to do? And then actually look at adopting the overall framework in March and then going through budgeting and work plan in the next few months after that, ending up in June when we adopt a budget usually. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious
Question,
about the process
Chris.
of how you arrive at this. Do you invariably adopt the goals that are received on the input pretty uniformly, or are there certain issues that you got a lot of input on that people thought were important, but that the city and the council didn't think should be? I mean,
Well,
how does that
The
translate?
key one there is when folks are really advocating around things that are outside of what the city does. So we did a public survey at the end of the year, and there was a strong desire for people in the area of homelessness to like make sure people have services, that they have behavioral health and mental health and addiction services. Like people really want that. It's not something the city does. So you will not see that particular thing in our goal, but what you'll see is we want to make sure that we're working fully with the coordinated office, with the county, and that we're advocating for those things, even though we don't directly provide them, and that we're supporting nonprofits, and that we're opening shelters with those services available and things like that. So I think that's the number one area where you don't see everything getting in. I mean, and then there are just things that I think rise to the top of the top priorities, recognizing that we don't have the capacity to do everything. So we can't, and I think Michaela sent you like the long spreadsheet of all the inputs we got. So from that, you know, we have to synthesize, plus the values that, you know, that we were elected to represent people on, plus, you know, past goals and experience of what we still have left to do, and kind of put those all together. And that's a lot of what that retreat is about.
Is there much, can I continue with time? Is there much dissension in the meeting, like in this retreat? Is there true negotiation on these issues, or?
Yeah, there's some back and forth. They were all public, they're all recorded, so you can watch if you want.
okay.
Yeah, we were over at OSU Cascades in one of their classrooms that had all the technology to record the whole meeting, so you can watch. I mean, I think there's some back and forth. A lot of it is not necessarily that we don't like an idea, but should it be on the list? right, as a priority. That's a lot of what the discussion was around, is like, what do we want to call out as priorities? What do we think are cool or good ideas, but maybe don't make it to the list of what we're going to do in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I guess I just wonder how much the council flows together in terms of the issues and how you all think about each of the issues, because I think, at least from the ABNA perspective, the perception is that, like, a lot of the council voted unanimously on a lot of votes last.
You haven't
last
watched our
session.
first couple meetings, have you?
Yeah. Well,
We've had some-
not current meetings, but the
Yeah.
last group.
Mhm.
And so I was just kind of wondering if do you perceive that that's changed now with the new group?
Well, I think you can see from sort of the guiding principles that we share a lot of the same, we share these values, right? And that's where our decision-making comes from. Now, like how we get there, what exactly the policy is, whether or not we all vote together, I think that differs going forward. But we have a lot of those same core values. And so I think that can make it seem like we're all aligned. And on the values, I think there is a lot of alignment. But on the decision points, we've already had many non-unanimous votes, right?
Okay.
Where people think the tactics should be different, or the solution isn't quite good enough, or I would have gone a different way. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Lisa, sorry. Heather.
Thanks for calling on me. I just want to bring up, it seems to me that when we were debating the transportation bond this last go around, that one of the selling points around that transportation bond was that we were expecting to retire a couple of these bonds. We were going to meet our obligations, and that people weren't going to have those on their taxes anymore. So they weren't going to feel the impact of this transportation bond quite so fully. I guess I just want to bring up, this is going to be a perception issue, that here we are going back to the table and considering more taxes when in fact we told them we weren't going to have any. So
I don't know who said that, because the transportation bond is the first in a series of solutions that are identified in our transportation system plan. And actually, anyone who would like to take a look, tomorrow night, we're having a work session that's going to talk a little bit about this history of where this idea of a transportation fee comes from. It's not out of the blue. It's part of what the Citizen Advisory Committee put together when they were advising on the transportation system plan, and that a previous council approved as part of that plan, is understanding the funding gaps for our transportation system, one of which was the capital investment of the GO bond that voters approved to build projects. But another one was operations, maintenance, programs, and other things identified in the TSP that would also need a funding source. And that there were several options that a committee of folks pursued and said, okay, well, here are the things that we're going to need to move into after we move through the bond. So, I mean, I remember the bond, there was talk about not levying it until the year after, because we were in the pandemic and all of that. So there was a delay of it coming into play, but I don't think there was ever a thought that that was it. You know, we have a much bigger funding gap for our transportation system than just the GO bond. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night.
All right, Elizabeth, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask for clarification. Ross asked about this, and it may be my slow hearing or something, but I was curious again about what you said in regards to the tree ordinance. It seemed like that was a really big item that rose to the surface, and I just was asking if you could sort of repeat what you had said about the tree ordinance and where it fell in the goal setting priorities.
Sure.
Thanks.
We are embarking on that work. I'm trying to find the
March
agenda.
15th.
March 15th is our work session on the tree code. So it wasn't on that list of carry forwards because we expect to be moving through it quite shortly. So sorry if that wasn't clear, but that will be coming up next month.
And Elizabeth, I don't know if this helps, but there's not really a direction for the tree code right now. We know it was a high priority. We know that the community is very interested in having this discussion. But as far as like bringing an idea to council, we're not quite at that point yet. March 15th, we'll be talking to council about where should we go with this. So it'll be a good one to tune into.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mayor Keebler?
That's a council meeting, March 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 5 p.m. work session
Okay.
slot. Yeah.
Is the best way to email input or actually attend in person?
Either way. Yeah.
Good.
Either way.
Yeah. Usually the work session happens and we don't have the visitor input until the business meeting at 7.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to listen and then give input off the cuff, or if you want to watch and then email us later, that's totally fine as well. Yeah.
Mayor Keebler, thank you so much for your time and all of your time investing in our city and working with the council for this goal setting
Yeah.
process.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those of you that maybe didn't catch it in an email, Mayor Keebler is our new council liaison for the NLA. So Councilor
Yes,
Perkins
you'll
has-
see me again.
Yes, she will be helping us out.
What?
You dropped
Oh, thanks.
cute photos.
Yeah, these are like stuck in my, from this city Christmas party. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna go sit back here instead of up here.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we've got some outstanding. We're flying through this agenda, guys. Just
Yeah, Valentine's
Happy
dinner.
Valentine's Day. So outstanding items. Kayla, what meeting time and dates are we just?
Yeah, so I've heard from several of you. I know this 4 p.m. time slot might be difficult for those of you that have kiddos in school and they're back in school now. So I just want to, we usually do this when we reelect vice chair and chair. However, we were a little cut short on time last meeting. So I wanted to give you all an opportunity. If you have preference for a different meeting time, I guess now is the time to speak up. We are the second Tuesday, as you know, 4 to 6 p.m. But we as a committee have the ability to change that if we need to.
The time, not the second Tuesday.
Both.
Oh.
Either. We obviously want to be flexible. and
Fifth
make
Tuesday's
sure.
off the table.
Well, we said only Valentine's, Thanksgiving, and Hanukkah.
Summer.
I'll just add my input. I'm fine with this Tuesday. That works just fine for us, and it coordinates nicely with our board meetings. I would ask that the time get pushed out a bit for the kiddo reason stated previously by Michaela. So at least to 5 o'clock, if not 5:30, would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense, Summer. Are there other folks that feel that? I certainly would appreciate that. I'm starting a new job that I think will take me till a normal working hour. Okay. Lisa.
I'm in favor of a later time. Either that or I'm in favor of a morning time, but it doesn't seem like a morning time is going to work with people with kids or work.
Would there, go ahead,
Jim.
Yeah, I can handle a later time, probably work better for me if it were later.
Okay.
Sometimes I have daytime activities. So thank you.
And Elizabeth Rhodes?
I can manage the 4 o'clock time if I'm doing Zoom. If I'm trying to get home to drop off and then back in person with y'all there in town, that I can't do at 4:30. I will say that pushing it later makes it then a little harder if there are homework questions or sort of those kinds of, trying to have a family dinner. But it is only once a month, so I can be flexible.
Lisa, is your hand up again?
Yeah, I just want to add that one of the reasons we ended up at 4 o'clock previously was out of consideration for city staff. Remember that the later we meet, the later they have to stay, and they don't necessarily get to come into work later just to compensate. So that was how we arrived at 4 o'clock previously.
I can send out an email to the committee. It sounds like there are enough people to want to change the time to a later that we can poll and see if we want to make that 4:30 or 5. And we can go from there. Does that sound okay?
And Lisa, if you can hear me, this is Ian, and if meetings go late, I am definitely coming in later the next day, so it's no problem.
Sleep in. I'll hit the slopes in the morning if that's.
We can talk to the mayor about that.
Yeah, I hope your boss supports that. That's all I have to say.
I want to treat you like human beings
Sure.
as much as possible.
Appreciate it.
So we'll follow up via email and kind of figure this out. But thank you for starting the conversation and being open to making sure that we can have full participation without too much headache and heartache for everybody. Outstanding item B was roadmap/agenda topics.
Yes. So the chairs and I met to talk about the upcoming agendas. One of the things that we heard a lot from the neighborhood associations in goal setting was the neighborhood street safety program. I know that we're all asking for an update on that. And so I do have Christian Williams, the program manager, scheduled for our March meeting. So if you want to let your neighborhoods know, we'll be talking about the neighborhood street safety program, where it's currently at, where it might be going in the future now that we're using bond funds for those projects. So that's something to keep in mind. Summer, did you have a question about that?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Christian was able to join us at our Orchard District board meeting, and he said that he loves that kind of gig. So if any other NAs would like to have him show up and talk specifically about your projects, I think he'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. He said that he had reached out to the 6 upcoming neighborhood associations that have projects they're going to start, and had not gotten responses back from all of them. So I'm going to send it out in the newsletter this week, just a reminder, and with a list of like what projects are coming up and what ones will be remaining. So we can all get on the same page.
What's his name again?
Christian Williams.
Christian Williams.
And are you saying that at our March meeting, he is updating
Yes.
on the progress of that?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Elizabeth.
Can I take advantage of the mayor being here and ask a question? I had heard a vicious rumor that that the list of projects, so when the NSSP originally came out, which was before my time, but I know it's a very hot topic to people.
Yeah.
That a lot of associations, and maybe especially River West, had submitted more projects than could have been incorporated.
Every association.
I'm sure that's true.
It was a super, super long list.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've heard that that list is not really being, heard they're not going back to that long list and going.
We're still working through the ones that were identified as priorities.
Okay.
Still now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
So
haven't run out.
Yeah.
That's what,
Yes.
that's my understanding. I thought there was going to be like what I heard was that there was going to be kind of a re-ask, like, oh, do you all really want these projects, or what about this project or this project? Like, I thought that there was, the rumor I heard was that like the effort that the
Yeah.
neighborhoods put in.
Well, I think
was-
after enough time passes, I think it's worth revisiting, what are the prioritized projects? So the way it moved before is each NA prioritized projects, and then they went to the bigger list, and then NLA prioritized that list. So it went through a couple of iterations. But as Michaela said, now we're using bond funds for it. So our TBOC has to have oversight over that as well.
Right.
So I think we're trying to figure out how do we kind of mesh those two, but practically we're still working on the ones that were identified
Yeah.
originally.
Yeah, those initial 25 are set in stone is what I would say, except before we start designing each project, we ask the neighbors again, like, is this still a priority? So we're doing that fact checking, but we're also, when we have 360 projects that were submitted initially, that, we prioritize the top 25, 26. The rest of those, we might just have people submit those projects again. I mean, we don't know what
Maybe
that'll
new
look like
ones.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you will let us know if you need more ideas.
Oh, right.
Of course.
No lack of ideas.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
I think that just answered my question, because we still in Southwest Bend have one project that, if I recall off the top of my head, was slated for 2023, which was one of the later ones. And it tied into funding for the safe passage or safe pathways or whatever it's called to schools. So I guess if I want to just check on that, where's the best place to go, or should I get in touch with Christian, or what should I do to follow up with that for our neighborhood?
Christian will be the best contact for you. So if it was in that initial 25, he has it on his radar, and I can send you his email.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And then I guess in addition to the neighborhood street safety program, We also have it on our radar to begin another strategic goal retreat, if you will. So getting together as a committee, maybe with some more of our neighborhood leaders, like our chairs, and having the conversation about what the NLA should be working on over the next 2 years. And of course, that will be including council goals, which we hope to have an idea of what that framework will be at the end of March, right? So when we get into April, May, June, we'll start to talk about what we'll be focusing on, and we'll do that with a consultant. We have some funds to do that, and we did it a couple of years ago. So for those of you who are new, it'll be a fun process. At least we usually have a lot of fun with brainstorming and coming up with our plans. So.
Mandatory fun.
Mandatory fun. I'll probably make you draw pictures of yourself as
No.
Counselor
It was
Keeler
really
said.
good. It was fun.
We will not. We will not.
So that's it for me on the roadmap. I just wanted to give you an idea of what's in the pipeline, what we've been talking about. Of course, if you have ideas or requests for agenda topics, send those to me or bring them up at an NLA meeting, and I bring those to our meetings with the chairs, and we can talk about how we could get that included.
Great. Everybody good? All right. Next up is our liaison update. I think just for the neighborhood association roundtable. So Lisa, if you have an update for us from NART, now is your time.
Gosh, I don't really have much of an update from NART. We had a good meeting at the end of January, and there is that letter that was submitted by some of the NART representatives. I do want to point out that it was not an overall NART letter. Not all of the representatives signed on to it. So that's about it. NART is just very focused back on operational efficiencies and the information that we can share to make our neighborhood associations stronger. We're not necessarily trying to get involved in policy directives like the NLA.
Thanks so much, Lisa. All right, I'll direct you all to the back of your agendas for important upcoming dates. City Council work session tomorrow on that transportation fee, regular meeting tomorrow night, so on and so forth. And our next NLA meeting will be March 14th at a time that we might tweak slightly based on that email conversation that Michaela will bring. Great. We will move everything around Gina's family. I'm just kidding.
Lisa.
We will figure that out, and they can come. Yeah.
Perfect.
Public comment time. So have those things on your radar. And Lisa, you got something else before we close?
Yeah, Michaela, I believe there's a Bend 101 event this Thursday. And I think several of us received an email from Garrett Janecki. Is there anything that you can tell us about this event?
Is that for the chamber? Yeah, it's the chamber.
Yeah, so it's a chamber event. This is the one that we started about a year ago, partnering with them on. They were held at Tethero for a while, but I'm happy to see that they're downtown now. We get an opportunity to have a table set up with the neighborhood association's map, signups so that people who are there and don't know what a neighborhood association can figure out what it is. I help them find what one it is, and then afterwards I send those new members to all of you to connect with. So just another opportunity to get the neighborhood associations out front. Eric King actually does share a slide about neighborhoods and gives us a little plug there too. So go ahead.
It seems like that might be a great opportunity if any of us have big events that maybe we want to feed it to Garrett, give him a heads up. But it also looks like the one after this Thursday is back at Tethero, and that one's on May 4th. So
yeah,
seems like a worthwhile.
They hold them quarterly.
Okay. Thank you, my friends. My Valentine's Day gift to you is an extra 40 minutes in your life. So I'm gonna go ahead, as long as all hearts are clear, adjourn our meeting at 5:20. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.